John, speak your page for a minute.
Thanks so much, Nadia. I'm John LeRoux. I'm the manager of collections and exhibitions at Beaverbrook, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I've known Ned for a little over 30 years. There's a cliche in art for any artist that any work of art is a self-portrait in some capacity. And the funny thing is, with Ned, it's not a cliche. I mean, here's Ned. Those of you that knew Ned, I mean, that's Ned, isn't it? That's Ned. That's Ned. Ned is here, and there's some Ned here. There's a 1991 National Film Board movie, which I think 91 doesn't sound long ago to me, but that's 30 years ago. Life was different in 1991. I want to read you what Ned Bear said. It was called Quinute, Micmac and Maliseet Artists. And it featured about 7 or 8 artists from New Brunswick and Nova Scotia. And it was a much younger Ned, but a Ned that at that time was just developing his rigor and his repertoire and his sensibility and his called his fame, his renown. And he said, so many people think that our culture is dying away. He says, I live on a reserve. And when I look around at a reserve, what I see is not good. The culture needs a lot. It needs a lot of help. It needs a really big push. Ned was that push. And when you look at the works that are around here today, many of you I know were here a week ago for the Wabanaki opening exhibition. That would not exist were it not for Ned Bear. Ned Bear in many ways is the foundation, or certainly a major part of the foundation of contemporary Indigenous art in Eastern Canada. And a magnificent individual. I cannot imagine the artistic world, not only of Indigenous art and culture, but general visual art as a whole in New Brunswick without Ned Bear. Ned Bear was not the best Indigenous artist. He was not the best sculptor. He was the best sculptor artist in general. He was one of the greatest artists and cultural figures New Brunswick has ever had. So we can't just simply put him in this place. He's bigger than that. He was a wonderful person. And when you watch that movie again now, you see Ned, this sort of poignant, this very thoughtful person that I think he actually thought there was a real good chance that the culture, he was still on the last ebbs and flows of this culture dying away. And he was so proud to see that it is not and what's happening today. And it warms my heart beyond to see what he does, but what Charlie, what you've done at the college and what Percy's doing. And you know what Emma's doing with us at the gallery now. So much of it has to do with the roots of what Ned Bear has done. I met Ned about 30 years ago because my mother started a program at Fredericton High School called, at the time called the Native Art Program. And it was something that she was inspired by something she saw in Arizona where the First Nations students were having a lot of problems. They weren't staying in school. There was a lot of attrition, but a bigger problem, and we can't avoid this at the time. There's still a lot of, even in the school system 30 years ago, still some today. Hopefully it's better. There's a lot of racism. There's a lot of ignorance. There's a lot of overlooking. It was not an easy time, and people left the school system. It was awful. My mother saw a program in Arizona where, in a Navajo reservation down there, where they had a course to bring culture and awareness and inspiration through education through culture. She said, we can do that in Fredericton. So what you get? You get Ned Bear. So my mother asked Ned Bear if he'd be interested in leading this fine arts course at Fredericton High School, and he said, of course. And it saved people's lives. It saved people's lives, didn't it? Plus, it saved Ned's life in many ways, too. But that's another story. Over about 5 years, Ned taught these students, and Mom made sure that it was the first course of the day, so they'd have to come, and then they'd end up staying for the rest of the day. But who was in that? Charlie was in that course. Percy Sokovia was in that course. Shane Purley-Dutcher was in that course. But Ned was so pluralistic and understanding. He didn't just limit it to First Nations students. There was a young man who was white, his name was Daniel Porter, needed some help. And he was artistically inclined, not doing well in school. And then said, sure, Daniel can come. So we taught Daniel how to carve. Daniel is now one of the most highly acknowledged wildlife pastel artists in North America. All because of Ned. Because Ned shared that wealth and that love and that diligence. And what he would do is he would bring the students along with him. It wasn't simply a teaching of skills, it was understanding of themselves, an acknowledgement of pride in themselves and of culture and of this place and of how to work and of a discipline, and to say that, and again, you know this, Charlie, it's never done until it's perfect, right? And the work that came out of there was good. And you would think that you could show a grade 10 student something like this and say, we're going to make a mask. They go, oh, and they'd record, no way. So how did they do it? He would show them the mask and say, you're going to be able to do this. But he would always only be one step ahead of them to say, it's not going from 0 to this. He would say, I'm going to be making my mask with you. So I'm going to do exactly what I'm going to bring you along. And it was the most incredible, empowering experience. Because all of these young kids that were one step away from leaving school and their lives being changed became artists. And developed this enormous sense of pride and potential, realized they could do anything. And they had. And Ned was an amazing, amazing guy. And he cared so deeply for this culture and this place. And he didn't always have it easy. He said in the beginning, when he was starting out, he didn't have a lot of allies because he was so far ahead of the curve. Over time, they came. Near the end of his life, about 10 years ago, before he had his stroke, he was asked to go to the Smithsonian in Washington, National Museum of the American Indians, which unfortunately he couldn't because of a stroke, but he was getting international accolades. And I think that for someone, he never left this place. He never left his friends, his family, his community, New Brunswick, St. Mary's, people like Charlie. You know, he never left you. He never left. He cared so deeply about this. And I think when you look at these masks, and Ned is here, and we are so much richer for it. And at the Beaverbrook, about a week ago, we got a call from a woman whose mom had just died. And she said, I have a Ned Bear work we'd like to give you, because she always wanted to go to the Beaverbrook. It's a huge stone sculpture. He did it his last year at the College of Craft and Design, so he was still a student. I've never seen so beautiful stone carving ever done in Canada. Black limestone, the space is called the Chanter, where this kind of aged face is up singing, and the hair and feathers are turning into these sort of waves of water ripples on the sea. And as soon as we got it, we put it up. And Ned said that actually, he remembered that was the favorite thing he ever did. And it just warmed my heart so much to say that this stuff, it will keep coming out. And the beauty and the power of Ned's work, and it was something to behold. And I know that he made such a difference to the lives of so many of our lives. It's a pleasure to be here. He was such a wonderful person, and again, he's one of those few people I'd say the world would be much, much less rich were it not for Ned Bear. So thank you for coming, and continue to honor Ned and the legacy that he's left, and all of the new and the young artists that are here. This is all Ned Bear. Thank you very much.